Hey guys, Dave here. Welcome to the Centurions Review, the punk rock band of wargame review institutions. This is Sorrim from Ostara Games. They sent me a starter set for their collectible card game. I guess it says Triumphant Origins on it. First I'm going to show you what's in here, and then I'm going to show you how the game's played. And then both I and one of my playtesters, Len, will give a short review of it. Alright, so inside the box, first thing you have some little tokens. And it also includes a dice. The reason for the tokens is some cards get tokens on them just like they do in Magic the Gathering. And also, the rule book isn't included in the starter set. You download it from online. Here's the rule book here. To keep track of your stats, you have might, altruism, trickery, and health. You can put these counters on it to keep track. I prefer not to use this sheet and just to use like a blank piece of paper and just write down what the current values are, because these change during the game. So let me show you the rest in here. Alright, here's the quick start guide. First thing you'll do when you play this game is you pick out a character, and so does your opponent. And then each character you'll equip with 3 sigils. We'll get into that in a minute. But the basic sequence of play at the beginning of the game, both of you will roll to see who goes first, and then the winner of the roll will determine. So during your turn, you roll a dice to cast your sigil, and the attack will hit if the number on the die matches the number on the sigil, and then you do damage, and then it goes to your player's turn, your opponent's turn. So it's really simple. We'll get into it in more detail in a minute. Let me show you the cards. Let me actually separate them here. Here's the characters. That's the first type of card. In this game, you can have 1 or 2 characters. On the bottom here, these numbers here, the first one is might, the second one is altruism, the third is trickery, and the fourth is health. Obviously, if your health goes to 0, that character is dead. And at the top, you have some symbols. These symbols determine what sigils you can use with this card. The sigil doesn't have to have both colors, it just needs to have one of them. I know in Magic the Gathering, if you want to cast a spell, if it has 2 colors, you have to use both types of mana. Well, this is different. You can either use purple sigils or blue ones here. There's a list of what all these symbols stand for in the book too. But also, usually that character has a special ability, like this one. Whenever this fighter successfully casts a water sigil, you can roll a die. If it lands on a 3 or a 6, remove all counters from your enemy's fighters without triggering their effects. Alright, here's another one here. Whenever a fire or stone sigil is successfully cast, place a counter on him. Let me show you one of my favorite ones here. I like this one. He's got a real strong health, and he starts with quite a bit of might. Might is how much damage you will do to the enemy if your sigil successfully hits. And he has a kind of an interesting effect here. Whenever this fighter receives direct damage from an attack sigil, increase this fighter's might stat by 5. So whenever he takes damage, his ability to do damage increases. So that's kind of cool. There's like synergy between some of these cards and stuff with their sigils and stuff too. But yeah, here's a bunch more. So these are the characters here. Let me bring out some sigils now. For sigils, you have 2 types. You have passive ones, and I guess the other ones you would call active ones. The passive ones is just a passive effect. Like this one, this fighter takes 15 reduced direct damage from enemy knight-based sigils. And here's the active ones, meaning if this is equipped to your guy, if you roll a 1, 2, 3, or 6 when attacking your enemy, it will hit. And so this has an effect called Wilt Might, which uses trickery. If your trickery is at least 65, your opponent will lose 5 might. If it's 100 or more, your opponent will lose 10 might. Alright, let's go through a few others. Alright, this one, the effect is Wilt Might and Raise Trickery. So if your trickery is at least 65, your opponent loses 5 might, or 100 or more, they lose 10 might. If your altruism is 65, you will gain 5 trickery, or if it's 100, you'll gain 10 trickery. Some cards, as you notice here, this is a minimum of 65 in order to be able to use for that to go off. If you have less than 65, you're going to need another sigil that would raise your altruism. So that's a synergy that comes between some of these. And let's look at a few more. Here's another one where if you hit, you get an effect challenge, roll a die. If it lands on 5, remove all counters from the enemy frontline fighter and negate any effects that activate from removing the counter. Alright, let me show you how to play. Let's take a look at the opposing forces now. This is just going to be a one character versus one character game. Sometimes you also have the option of having 2 characters where one will be in your front line and one will be in the back line, and when the one in the front is killed, the one in the back line moves forward, or they can change places also. But anyhow, let me show you the sigils hooked up to Gravius here. The first is Nocturnal. This fighter takes 15 reduced direct damage from enemy night-based sigils. That could come in handy if your enemy has night-based sigils. You're not going to know until the game starts, though, so you kind of take a risk with it. This other one's another passive one. A fighter equipped with a sigil gains an additional 15 might. That's a really good one because he starts with 90, and with the additional 15, that's at 105. So he does 105 damage, which is fantastic. And this one here, this is the one he's going to attack with. He'll need a 1, 3, 4, or 6 to hit. There's an effect challenge. This only occurs if he has a successful hit. You'd roll a dice, and if it lands on 2, your frontline fighter gains an additional 5 or 10 might. So that's really good. Alright, let's look at the enemy forces here now. Let's see if I can zoom in onto them. Alright, the first is Sacred Spring, which is passive. Wilts targeting this fighter are less effective and reduce stats by 5 less, so that's a good one. This one here can do damage. This is Swamp Strike, which will hit on a 1, 2, 3, or 5. The effect is Wilt Might and Wilt Altruism, so if it successfully hits and your trickery is 60 or higher, you do -5 to their might, or if it's 90 or higher, you do -10. It's actually not that good a card for this one because this trickery is at 30. The starter set only had 4 cards with blue on them that I could use with this, so I was stuck using this one. But if your trickery is at 60, you'll do -5 to their altruism or -10 to their altruism, so really those effects aren't going to go off unless I have something to increase his trickery, which I do. It's this card here. This one you can attack with 2, and a 1, 2, 3, or 6 it does damage. If your trickery is 65, you'll do -10 to their might, or 100, -10 to their might, but that's not going to work because you don't have 65 trickery. However, if your altruism is 65, it's 80 here, so you can use that. You'll add 5 to your own trickery, or if it's 100, you'll add 10 to it, so you can use that card to beef up your trickery stat in the hope that you can use the effects of this card later. Alright, first thing we're going to do is roll for initiative. Gravius rolls a 4, and Shellin rolls a 5, so Shellin's going to go first. Alright, he's choosing to use Siren Song. So he needs a 1, 2, 3, or 6 to hit. He gets a 1, so he hits. And his might is currently at 55. So he'll do 55 damage to Gravius. Gravius is now at 445. Okay, and now we go for the effects here. Trickery, he doesn't have 65, but his altruism is at 65, so his trickery will go up from 30 to 35. Now it's Gravius's turn to go. And this is the only attack card he has, so a 1, 3, 4, or 6 he hits. He gets a 3, so he hits. His might is at 105, so Shilon loses 105, so he's down to 445, so they're tied. And let's see what else occurs here. Oh, I forgot, when he receives direct damage from an attack sigil, which occurred last turn, his might increased by 5, so actually he's at 110. So now it did an additional 5 to Shilon, so he's at 440. And the effect here, roll a die. If it lands on 2, I gain, does not. He would have gained 10 might. And then it goes back to Shilon, who's going to attack with Siren Song again. He misses. He needed a 1, 2, 3, or 6. So Gravius is going to go again. He's going to attack. He gets a 1, so he hits. And he will do 110 damage to Shilon, bringing him down to 330. Alright, so that's basically how the game works. It's a very simple game, but it is fun. So we're going to go to Len's quick review, and then to my quick review. Alright, thanks for playing, Len. Let us know what you thought of it.
It's a cute game. If you're into card games, something like the Magic the Gathering, you'll enjoy this. It's quick to learn. The cards are really colorful. The artwork is very good. Whoever did the artwork deserves a lot of credit. And if you're into fantasy, you'll do it. Don't ask me if this is better or worse than Magic the Gathering. I can't. I will not know enough to judge it. But by itself, it's good.
Alright, thanks for trying it, Len. I realize there's something I forgot to go over. It's what happens during a 2 versus 2 game or a 3 versus 3 game and one of the characters dies. So, if the defender loses his character, he will have to move one of his face-down fighters from the back row forward. He'll get to choose which one, if it's a 3 versus 3 game, or if it's just a 2 versus 2, he just takes the one there. And then the player who killed that character can take his character, which may have some wounds at the time or may not, and swap it for one of the characters in the back row if he wishes. As far as what do I think of this game, it's fun, but it's a very simple game. Some of the good aspects of it, there's synergy between the cards, meaning there's some cards that will increase your altruism, some which will increase your trickery or whatever. So if you don't have enough to do, like, use your trickery, you can use another card that increases your altruism to try and get that a trickery stat up enough that you can start using it. I just have the starter set here. It's got enough to learn the game and so forth. And some of the characters are better than others, and obviously there's only a limited supply of sigils. There's about 4 for each color, so eventually, if you like the game, you're going to want to get more cards. I don't know where you get more cards from. I'm not sure where this is sold. If the author is watching this, he can put in where you can buy this game and where you can get additional cards. I don't know if they have booster packs or what, but you're going to want them if you're going to play the game, because just like Magic the Gathering, most of the game's about getting the best cards. I mean, Magic the Gathering, there is quite a bit of strategy in it, actually, but in Magic the Gathering, what deck you build is extremely important. This game, it's not only is what character and what sigils you use extremely important, it's 90% of the strategy in the game. Really, the only strategy other than putting together your characters is determining what, if in like a 3 versus 3 game, determining what character to move forward if it's time to do so, or if it's just a 1 versus 1 game, you might have 2 attack sigils here, so you got to determine which one to use. But like I said, very little strategy, but it is a fun game, though. I think it's meant to be simple. I don't think it's meant to be like some hardcore complex game or anything. My only suggestion for this game is they need to get a Board Game Geek page for it, because every board game needs that, because that's where people go to get first place people go to get information on a board game, and getting a Board Game Geek page is free. And he also needs to get a website where you can buy these cards directly, or booster packs or whatever he has. As far as the stats for this game, I'd give it the fun rating of about a 6. It is fun to play. It's not as fun as some of the other collectible card games there, but for a simple game, it's pretty fun. As far as rulebook clarity, I'd give that a 7. I'm still not sure if you have to roll for initiative each turn. I don't think you do, but I'm not 100% sure after reading the rules. And the rules could have used maybe an example of play too. I mean, it's a really simple game, but there's nothing wrong with having an example of play in the rules. As far as components, they're pretty good. I would give those a 7. The artwork looks pretty good on them, and the card stock that's used is pretty decent. I wouldn't score it any higher than that, though, because it doesn't include a rule book with the starter kit. You have to go get a PDF of that. As far as originality, I'd give it a 5. I mean, it's a very simple collectible card game. There's nothing new or outstanding about it. As far as replayability, I'd give it a 6, assuming you can get additional cards for it. I haven't seen any booster packs or anything, but I assume they're out there. So yeah, I'd say replayability would be about a 6. Thanks for watching, and have a good evening.